In a lively office buzzing with activity, employees are deeply engrossed in their work. Among them sits Howard, a young man in the advertising department of the renowned Grand Glory Limited. With his phone pressed to his ear, he professionally assures a caller that their request has been logged and the issue will be resolved within 3 days. It's a routine task, much like his everyday life, which feels like an endless cycle of work, day in and day out. Howard reflects on his career with a resigned sigh. The weight of his responsibilities is constant, and the clarity he once had about his future is now clouded by uncertainty. Yet, today, there's a momentary glimmer of satisfaction. He finally nailed a challenging task. But even this fleeting accomplishment is overshadowed by the looming sense of doubt about where he's headed. Just then, a senior colleague approaches, addressing him with an air of urgency. The man shares unsettling news. The company has been facing tough times and layoffs are imminent. The warning is clear. Howard needs to step up his efforts. Panic sets in as the implications of the conversation sink in. Before Howard can dwell on it, the man hands him a hefty book filled with potential clients. The task is straightforward yet daunting. Call every name on the list and report back by tomorrow. Howard, overwhelmed, wonders why he's being given this monumental task. To make matters stranger, someone nearby mentions a dream test, a bizarre concept rooted in advanced big data analytics. According to their calculations, Howard is the ideal candidate. Howard is baffled. A dream test? He's never even been interested in VR products, let alone wanted to be a part of such a project. The explanation follows. It's a cutting-edge simulation, an exclusive experience akin to a high-end VR game, where participants can live out different scenarios in a custom-built dreamland. The concept feels absurd to Howard. He considers leaving, citing his work obligations. However, before he can step away, someone casually mentions that Dreamland includes a feature to recreate duplicates of real people and shape their experiences. The suggestion lingers provocatively. What if he could live as someone else? Another remarks, almost tauntingly, that Howard doesn't seem content with his current life. Amid the chaos, the atmosphere shifts as the boss enters, accompanied by the poised and confident Sabrina Liu, their newly appointed director. Introductions begin, with the boss highlighting the achievements of key team members. One worker, ever the opportunist, showers Sabrina with praise while crediting his success to the boss's guidance. Howard silently fumes at the blatant flattery, observing how this sycophantic behavior has propelled his colleague's career. When the spotlight turns to Howard, the boss dismissively refers to him as mediocre and lacking in interpersonal skills. Sabrina's curiosity about him is quickly brushed aside. A flashback reveals a stark contrast. Howard had once been praised by colleagues for securing a high-maintenance client, a feat that drew envious glares from others. Yet, his straightforward nature often clashed with superiors, including Mr. Wong, who had undermined him before. As the day winds down, the team exchanges goodbyes, preparing for another grind tomorrow. Alone with his thoughts, Howard reflects bitterly on his efforts. He'd believed that hard work would eventually earn him recognition, but reality has proven otherwise. Later, Donald, a fellow employee, advises him once again to play the game, to align with the boss's interests and secure his position. But Howard resents the idea, recalling how Donald had previously sabotaged others, turning their successes into stepping stones for his own gain. A question lingered in Howard's mind. Was this truly the right thing to do? Meanwhile, in a passing taxi, Donald observed Wong and Sabrina. Wong, always assertive, warned Sabrina not to waste her energy on the workers. Tomorrow would demand her full attention. Sabrina, unshaken, dismissed his concern with quiet confidence, her words layered with a resolute self-assurance. Wong, however, pressed on, hinting that her actions sent mixed signals. He worried they might encourage overreach. Unbeknownst to them, Howard overheard every word, his mind racing with unresolved tension. Howard had grown weary. Outside the workplace, his hard work often went unnoticed, overshadowed by the weight of discrimination. He had endured enough. A decision formed in his mind. Tomorrow, he'd seriously consider resignation. But tonight, his frustration demanded an outlet. Determined, he initiated the Dreamland system. His goal was clear: to scan Sabrina Liu and Mr. Wong for duplicates within the virtual space. Yet, an error flashed across the screen. Only one individual could be scanned at a time. The system prioritized Sabrina. The scan concluded, and Howard felt a pang of frustration. Why hadn't he been told earlier about this limitation? As his irritation flared, the system detected his emotional spike. A mechanized voice concluded he was enjoying this. He muttered about Sabrina's antics, half annoyed, half amused at the idea of an NPC servant modeled after her. The system reminded him that Dreamland would activate at midnight, leaving him just a few hours to rest. But sleep wouldn't come easily. Anxieties churned in Howard's mind, keeping him awake. The system intervened, activating a neural protocol to override his brain's sleep resistance. His consciousness faded into slumber. When he awoke, Howard found himself sprawled on the floor. Before him stood a girl, her presence commanding yet enigmatic. She introduced herself as AI-63, the voice that had been guiding him all along, now materialized as his Dreamland administrator. Howard rose, brushing off the moment's disorientation, and asked, "Has it started?" "Not yet," AI-63 replied. Supplies were necessary for the impending battles. With a gesture, she opened a door marked with the number 1, revealing a shop stocked with survival tools and weapons. Credit points became his currency, and each item carried a price. A machete for 2 points, a truck for 40, compressed food for 1. As Howard surveyed the items, his gaze landed on an endless power battery. Its potential fascinated him, but AI-63 warned him not to touch what he wasn't ready to purchase. Howard nodded, absorbing her advice. Strategic spending would be crucial. He inquired about NPCs, particularly strong ones. AI-63 informed him that a powerful NPC would cost an exorbitant 10,000 points. Howard's protest of robbery earned only a calm response. Then came the final moment. AI-63 declared that Dreamland would activate immediately. The Doomsday Survival door creaked open, revealing the challenge ahead. "Have fun," she said, her tone both encouraging and foreboding, before leaving him to face his fate. A faint, eerie glow spilled from the door, jolting Howard awake. Panic clawed at him as he lay in bed, his breath shallow and rapid. The familiar surroundings of his home greeted him, unchanged, unyielding. He scolded himself for his naivety. How foolish to think technology, in all its advancements, could conjure an entire world from nothing. With a resigned sigh, he resolved to shake off the remnants of his restless thoughts, freshen up, and head to work. The bathroom light flickered on, casting harsh shadows on the walls, only to plunge him into darkness as the power abruptly failed. Unease curled in his stomach as he dressed and stepped outside. The street was desolate, an unsettling emptiness hanging in the air. Where were the people? His thoughts halted as the roar of an airplane shattered the silence, its descent catastrophic. Howard froze, eyes wide, as the aircraft crashed in front of him, flames erupting into the sky. A voice, cold and automated, chimed from a nearby car. Mini Dreamland Doomsday Survival initiated. Level 0. Duration 180 days. Panic tightened his chest. 180 days? He whispered, disbelief flooding his mind. Before he could process, a stream of gasoline leaked from the wreckage, igniting a fiery explosion. He dove to the ground, the heat searing, chaos consuming him. Heart racing, Howard gathered his thoughts. The voice had posed a grim challenge. Survive in a world where humanity had vanished. Planes could plummet, disasters would strike, and supplies were finite. His mind churned. He needed food, water, shelter, medicine, tools, and transportation. The days stretched out before him, daunting yet finite. If he strategized carefully, he could endure, and perhaps even reclaim control of his life, using this time to prepare for a fresh start after his resignation. Determined, he scavenged. A radio caught his eye, its crackling static oddly comforting. Trinkets of no practical value became tokens of fleeting joy. Yet his musings about survival turned surreal as a tiger, unmistakably real, padded into view. Howard froze as the creature approached, its golden eyes steady. The tiger, a former petting zoo resident named Dummy, renowned for its friendly demeanor, licked his face with surprising gentleness. The absurdity of the moment struck him. Even in this simulated nightmare, no detail was overlooked. Days turned into weeks. By the 7th day, the water supply had failed, forcing him to rely on bottled reserves. Without refrigeration, food spoiled rapidly, and maggots infested everything. He scavenged what he could, from canned goods to heartier rations, but the looming specter of malnutrition gnawed at him. It was during one of these desperate searches that he stumbled upon salvation, the Blue Sky restaurant. Inside, a diesel generator hummed faintly, a relic of his childhood memories. It had kept the building powered for 7 days, but its whirring suggested imminent failure. The frozen meat was salvageable, but only just. He resolved to make this his base, working by day to gather supplies, and by night to cultivate land and prepare for long-term survival. By the 31st day, Howard's resolve wavered as the weight of isolation bore down on him. The city was a wasteland, a graveyard of rotting produce and relentless flies. Even the faint promise of fresh garlic sprouts, a hard-won victory, felt hollow amidst the stench and decay. At night, the suffocating darkness whispered of abandonment, and the wind carried only the echoes of a world long gone. Despair crept closer, but Howard clung to purpose. This game, cruel and unrelenting, was his to master, not the other way around. One day, as he drove aimlessly, his thoughts drifted to Sabrina Liu, the mysterious assistant promised to him in this simulated world. Was she real? A trick of the developers? His musings were interrupted by the sight of another car, a girl visible through its window. Howard's pulse quickened. Could it be Sabrina? In the dim light of the morning, Sabrina stirred awake, the coarse fabric of borrowed men's clothes brushing against her skin. A faint ache reminded her of the bandaged wound beneath, yet her curiosity outweighed the discomfort. She stepped toward the door, pushing it open to reveal a diesel generator humming steadily and shelves stocked with preserved food. No signs of the decay she had grown accustomed to. Howard's voice broke the silence, calm but laced with concern. He urged her to eat, presenting a modest meal he'd prepared. As she sat to eat, memories flickered in her mind. She remembered him, not the man before her now, but from a shared dinner after work, back when the world still spun on its ordinary axis. Hesitant, she asked his name. Howard, he replied, his voice tinged with recognition, as though he too saw glimmers of the past in her face. Sabrina's gaze drifted to the generator, the stocked shelves, and the patch of cultivated land beyond the door. "Did you do all of this?" she asked, her voice a mix of admiration and disbelief. Howard nodded, explaining his modest success in creating a semblance of stability. Then, turning the question back to her, he inquired about her journey. Her words carried a weight that hung heavy in the air. She spoke of her return to her hometown, now desolate, and the realization that Howard was the first living soul she'd encountered in a month. "What happened to the world?" she asked, her voice cracking under the enormity of the question. Howard could only shake his head. Answers eluded him as well. Their conversation flowed, tentative yet steady, like two survivors navigating the ruins of familiarity. Howard suggested they team up, a natural step in this new world where survival meant pooling resources. Sabrina agreed, albeit with a caveat. She needed boundaries, a distance between them, not just physically but emotionally. The declaration caught Howard off guard, a sharp reminder of their differences. Still, he agreed, rationalizing it as another facet of this strange new reality. Days passed, and their coexistence began to take shape. But tensions simmered beneath the surface. One morning, Howard awoke to the clatter of Sabrina reorganizing the warehouse, claiming it as her own space. She handed him a walkie-talkie, dismissively assuring him it would suffice for communication. The loss of the mannequin, a crude stand-in for companionship, stung Howard in ways he struggled to articulate. When she casually admitted to discarding it, he felt a pang of betrayal. Their tenuous alliance frayed further when Howard discovered a missing pistol from his collection. His accusations were met with Sabrina's exasperation, her patience wearing thin. She proposed separate routines, cooking and laundry apart, to avoid constant friction. Howard, though reluctant, conceded, interpreting it as a necessary measure for peace. Yet their differences continued to clash. Sabrina defended her guarded demeanor, citing her need for safety as a lone woman in uncertain company. Howard, stung by her assumptions, lashed out with bitter honesty, acknowledging her beauty and status but rejecting the notion that her sense of security should come at his expense. Their words cut deep, exposing vulnerabilities neither had intended to reveal. Day 120. Howard stepped outside, greeted by a brisk, cooler breeze. He noted the subtle transformation. This world, once barren and alien, now brimmed with life. Sabrina's careful hand had lined the streets with vibrant, potted plants, their lush greenery turning the neighborhood into a picturesque sanctuary. The vegetable garden thrived under her management, solving the food crisis that had once loomed so heavily over them. Yet, despite these victories, silence stretched between them, a silence born from a quarrel 3 months ago. He wondered how anyone could endure such isolation for so long. He couldn't. The creak of the car door broke his thoughts. Donald, his steadfast companion, sat in the passenger seat. Howard mused aloud about Sabrina, questioning whether her fierce battle with the garden mice had fractured something deeper within her. She seemed to thrive now without human connection, pouring her energy into the land as if the plants were her only companions. Today's mission was clear: scout for new supplies. Howard grimaced as he recalled the state of the supermarket's meat section. Maggot-infested and inedible. "We'll die before those germs get us," he muttered. Fish might be a better alternative. Maggots they could endure. Bacteria they could not. He resolved to catch fish, a food that at least appeared palatable. Their route included a stop at the zoo, a place Howard visited with both dread and fascination. He had formed an uneasy bond with the tiger there, a magnificent creature that had somehow survived, adapting to the strange rules of this new world. As Howard approached, the tiger lay lazily, exuding both power and calm. He chuckled, giving it a good rub, marveling that this apex predator had managed to outlast so many others. The tiger's diet, however, was a grim reminder of the world they now inhabited. Herbivores turned into prey, survival dictating the rules. Howard tossed the last of the meat from his dwindling freezer stock, watching as the tiger devoured the offering. But the moment of peace shattered when the beast suddenly bolted, lunging at a deer. Howard's heart skipped. Deer didn't have antlers in this zoo. This was a creature from the outside, a stark symbol of nature reclaiming civilization. The sky began to darken, and Howard felt a shift in the air, heavy, oppressive. His instincts screamed danger. "A typhoon," he muttered, eyes scanning the horizon. But a force 10 typhoon here? They were far from the coast. The realization struck like a thunderclap. This wasn't reality. It was the game, a cruel challenge designed to test him. His thoughts darted to Sabrina. Every day, she rode her bike into the mountains. She should have reached the peak by now, but where was she? Fear gnawed at him as he sped toward the house, the storm bearing down. The streets that Sabrina had so meticulously adorned were now strewn with fallen plants, a chaotic mirror of the storm within him. The door to the house stood ajar. Sabrina wasn't back. His mind raced, envisioning her defiance against the storm, perhaps battling it as she had the mice. He could almost hear her commanding them to leave her tomatoes alone. The storm was unrelenting, pounding the world around them with rain and wind. Howard stopped his car suddenly when he saw Sabrina standing alone, holding onto a pole for support. Her phone's flashlight barely lit up her face, pale with fear. Her leg was injured, and she looked fragile, as if the storm had drained all her strength. She asked him quietly if she would die here. Howard, steady and firm, told her no. He lit a small fire with his lighter to bring some warmth and calm to the chaos around them. His eyes drifted toward the mountains and the dark outline of a mansion he'd forgotten was there. Sabrina used to ride her bike in this area often, but now she was far from the strong, adventurous person he remembered. Howard knelt beside her to check her injury, but she pulled away, insisting she was fine. He stood, his tone serious. "This isn't the time to act tough," he said. "If that wound gets infected, it could be dangerous." But Sabrina shook her head and insisted she could handle it on her own. With a frustrated sigh, Howard turned to the task at hand. "Fine," he said. "Here's the plan. This storm could flood everything in the valley. That mansion in the mountains is high enough to be safe. We'll move whatever we can there and use it as our shelter." Sabrina asked what she could do, but Howard shook his head. "With that leg, not much. Stay here, keep the fire going, and make sure the room is ventilated so you don't get poisoned by the smoke." Howard stepped out into the freezing rain, taking a deep breath to steady himself. His thoughts were racing. The storm wasn't just dangerous. It had already stripped them of almost everything. The generator was broken, the freezer ruined, and most of their food had gone bad or been washed away. All that remained was barely enough for 2 meals. Hunting or fishing in this weather wasn't an option, and even the animal burrows were flooded. "This is life," he muttered bitterly to himself. But there was no time for self-pity. He needed to act quickly. He thought of Donald, a friend who once warned him that living too cautiously left you unprepared for real challenges. That truth stung now as Howard realized how ill-equipped they were to face this disaster. Suddenly, a tiger appeared out of the shadows. Howard called the animal Dummy, a name born from their strange, uneasy companionship over the past months. He needed the tiger's sharp instincts and strength, But Dummy's wild nature made him unpredictable. Howard pleaded with the tiger to help him hunt, but the tiger roared and turned away, leaving Howard to fend for himself. The storm pressed on as Howard drove through the rain. Everything felt strange and dreamlike, too vivid to be real, yet somehow off. Sabrina, Dummy, the storm itself. They all seemed like shadows of something familiar but distant. Then he saw Sabrina lying on the ground. He slammed the brakes and rushed to her side. She was soaked and shivering, barely able to speak. She explained weakly that she had gone out to collect rainwater, wanting to pull her weight and not rely on him for everything. But her stubbornness had left her collapsed and helpless in the mud. Howard lifted her, despite her protests. She insisted he let her go, reminding him of their deal. She handled the house while he worked outside. But Howard had had enough. "Stop it," he snapped, his voice sharp. "I've got too much to deal with already. From now on, I'm making the decisions,